Hi everyone. I've always been surprised, but maybe I shouldn't be, that some of the most watched uploads I ever did on YouTube had to do with baking bread, and specifically quick breads and things that don't take a lot of time to do, yet can yield a really excellent result in a good short period of time. A lot of the focus seemed to be on, getting it done quickly without really having a lot of understanding of the process and why good bread has to be made a certain way, and on the other hand, why the breads you make may be hard and may not. They may be what we call hockey pucks or door stops. They don't have any softness to them. They don't have enough rise to them, and they're not tasty enough. And I thought today I would talk about, in bread theory, I'm going to have a specific playlist that I want to develop that talks about baking bread from a theoretical or thinking person's point of view, so that you understand why things are the way they are, so when it comes time for you to make a loaf of bread, you can tweak it and twist it to your own purposes and your own flavorings and everything, without having to worry about will it turn out or not. It will turn out if you understand the theory of bread baking. What I want to talk about today is dough and making a dough. When I did my three-part Rosie's Lazy Bread, and it's only laziness so far as it didn't take a lot of time to do, but the results were spectacular. One of the things that I do, that the number one thing that you can do to incorporate flavor into your homemade bread, is to age the dough. How many of you, it's maybe a winter day and it's cold outside, you finish the morning shopping, you come home at 10, 11 a.m. in the morning and you think to yourself, I'm having a beef stew tonight, and geez, wouldn't it be great to have a nice loaf of homemade bread with the stew? So what do? You get the flour out. Maybe the flour's left over from Christmas time when you made cookies last year and it's 10 months, 11 months old. You pull that out. You don't really have a regard for if it's the right type of flour for making bread. It's all-purpose. That's good enough for you. And you pull it out and you commence to start making a dough, and you put the yeast in and you let it rise. Punch it down, you kneaded some, you let it rise again, and finally you punch the dough down the last time. You go to form it, you put it in a loaf pan, and you bake it, and then you wonder to yourself, why does it have sort of a metallic or not really a deep flavor to it, and why is the color yellowish instead of a golden brown? But one of the issues is that you're not aging your dough properly. There's a reason why cheese manufacturers age their products, because they taste better when they're allowed to age. Beef tastes better when it's aged. It's much more expensive in a restaurant if you buy steaks that are aged beef. Bread making is the same way. What they don't tell you in a lot of baking schools and The Joy of Cooking and some other baking cookbooks is the critical nature of having a dough that you age first. If there's one thing that you should do to improve your bread and make it taste better, that's to start it a day or two ahead of the day that you're going to eat it, and you will have an incredible flavor profile to the bread. Now you say to yourself, well, if I started a day or two early and I used the yeast amount that's specified in the recipe, then after a day, all the yeast will have exhausted all of the bread dough in there, and it will die, and it won't be active anymore. What you want to do when you're aging your dough is adjust the yeast accordingly, and put it in the refrigerator to age. Take it out occasionally to warm up, and then put it back in. But what I want to tell you to do is start 2 days ahead of when you want to have the bread, or even a day before. Cut the yeast amount in half. Instead of using a full tablespoon of yeast or 2 teaspoons, cut it down to a half a teaspoon if you're going to make it 2 days ahead of time. Even a quarter of a teaspoon. What that will do when you wet the dough, and it has that proofed yeast, that fluid yeast and water added to it. That small amount of yeast is going to slowly grow and multiply. So by 2 days later, it will have caused that dough to fully rise in the bowl. This is critical. Now listen to what I'm saying here. Start 2 days early. Start with a very small amount of yeast, 4 cups of flour, for example. Put the yeast in a little bit of lukewarm water, a cup of lukewarm water with a little bit of sugar to give it some activation. Once it's all foamy and bubbly, add it into your flour and your salt. Make a nice wet batter, and then sit it aside for 2 days, and it will slowly rise in there. And it's that rising and that exposure to the air and everything, and even though it's covered, the yeast will still get in there, the wild yeast. That's what's going to give the incredible flavor. So when it comes to the day that you want to have the beef stew and you want to have the loaf of bread, you take that bread and you work it and shape it into a loaf after it's risen and been punched down a couple times, and you put that on a bread sheet or in a loaf pan. It's going to have the most beautiful color, the golden brown, and it is going to taste so good that you're not going to believe the difference it makes aging your dough. Okay, so in today's upload, I just wanted to talk about the dough, and go try it for yourself. Try using just a little bit of yeast to start your bread recipe, and then letting it rise for a day or two, or letting it rise the first day and then stick it in the refrigerator for a day or two, so that the dough gets a chance to age a little bit and get those nice deep flavors to it. Okay, you will be very happy. Okay, thanks for watching, and stay tuned for the next thing that we're going to cover in the bread baking academy here. Okay, thank you.